When we're making music, one of the hardest things to do is to go from an idea to a complete song. Now, one of the best ways that we can use modern AI technology is to help us out with that transition by, giving us some suggestions on chord progressions and small variations that we can include to help keep the listener engaged for longer, which is important. So let's take a look at how AI can help us complete more songs, make more music, and have more fun. Usually what happens when you start a song is you kind of have a couple of chords that you like, something like this. And it just feels a little bit difficult to figure out exactly where to go from there to kind of continue the idea. So one thing that I really like to do is to have this thing called MIDI monitor out. And actually, if you work in Logic or Fruity Loops, you might even have like a chord readout anytime you play some notes. But in this case, if you use Ableton, just go ahead and use MIDI monitor, and that will help you figure out what chords you're actually playing. So you can see that we have an A minor 11th and a B minor 7th, okay? So what we're gonna do now is head over to ChatGPT and have us give it some suggestions on finishing out that chord progression. So the way I like to structure this is just to say something like, I'm making an EDM track or whatever genre you're working in, and then say something like, my progression is A minor 11 to B minor 7. And then you kind of give it some direction about what type of chord progression you want. So in this case, I might say something like, the song should sound pretty and uplifting. And then the last part is just telling it exactly what we want it to do. Just suggest some chord progressions that could work well. So now you can see we have 5 really nice options in front of us to try out for our next chords. Now, if we take this first one, we go to D major 9 after our first 2 chords, you might be thinking, I don't know how to play a D major 9. That's completely okay, because what we can do is go to pianochord.org, and we can use this as a reference to how we can play each of these chords on the piano, or you can draw them in, of course, in your DAW. So what we're going to do is go to the D tab here, and then we're going to go to D major 9 right here, and you can see that we play it like this. So this is the next chord that we're going to add, right? So it might sound something like this. Now the next chord that we need to add is an E7 sus4 to an E7, right? There's another way that we can reach the chord that we want by just typing E7 sus4, and we type enter, and we click this first one here, and we can see that you play it like this, right? And then if we type in E7, and we click E7 here, this is like this. So now if we add that into the very end here, we can get our first option here. And then if we switch the sound to something a little bit more interesting here. Now maybe I really don't like that E7 chord or the direction it's going with that, so maybe I'll just say without E7. And so now we can pick from these options without the E7 chord. And so say, for example, we can keep the first 3 chords and then just change the last one to C major 7. So you can hear that the octave of the chord is pretty low here. And so I really like to mess around with lots of different inversions. So just select like 1 or 2 of the notes and press shift up or shift down to change the octave of them. So we can change the way that it comes across in the chord progression, right? And the cool part too is that we can actually use more than one suggestion to have more variations for ourselves. So instead of just finishing out our chord progression, we can actually make another variation to keep it even more interesting for the listener. So maybe this time instead we use the D major 7, G major 7 suggestion and see how that sounds. And you can kind of use this as like the launching point for the rest of your song. Now, another really cool thing that we can do too is we can we can actually ask it to create a chord progression that will lead in nicely to this particular one that we have now. So we could say something like, how about a chord progression that leads into A minor 11, B minor 7, D major 9. And I love this. It even gives you different vibes like, Odessa or Flume, or, kind of the general mood, like melancholic, etc. So you can choose which direction you want to go. So if we take this first one, G major 7 to F sharp minor 7. And then now the hard part is over. The raw skeleton is there for the song, and then we can kind of spice it up and add different textures and move forward, rather than just being stuck with those two chords and wondering where to go. So even though AI can be pretty contentious these days in terms of like the creative spaces, especially in music, I think one of the best parts about this is that it allows you to kind of break out of some of the typical patterns that you use, or the typical progressions that you like to use, just to try out some new flavors and some different sounds to spice up your music in new ways. And at the end of the day, you're still relying on your own creative decision making to move the song forward in the direction that you want. So I hope this was helpful for you guys, and as always, happy music making, take care, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.